I used to be the kind of person who would sit down after an episode of Doctor Who and think about it a lot, and think about all the things that didn't make sense, and then go on the internet and find a bunch of other people who also found all the things that didn't make sense, and then we would all decide together that Doctor Who was terrible and it wasn't as good as it used to be. And I'm not that person anymore, and I think that's for the best. Now I just like to kind of sit back, and even if a plot doesn't make sense, or even if there's some Deus Ex Machina involved, or even if there's plot holes out the wazoo, for the most part, I forgive it. I'm not sure I could forgive something like that in the Night Garden episode, but I mean, like, I do have standards, but not to rag on the past episodes, but I mean, I kind of just go with the flow nowadays. That being said, Season 12 is the most I've enjoyed Doctor Who in a long time, and I don't think it's just because I've changed the way I approach it. I think in this season they've given Jodie Whittaker way more of a chance to shine, and the introduction of Sacha Dhawan's Master is like, they played off each other really well, and it was just really fucking good. Every scene that they were in together was so good. So going through the episodes real quick, Spyfall Part 1 and 2 were a lot of fun. The way that they introduced Sacha Dhawan's Master was pretty flawless, to be honest. It was a really strong opening to the season, and it really kind of signposted what was to come, especially in the cliffhanger at the end. I remember thinking that is the most interested I'd been in the Doctor Who overarching story for a very long time, especially after season 11. The only thing I'll say about it is that the whole Kasavin thing never really got resolved. It seemed like it was going to be revisited, but it wasn't. But I don't know, I'll probably have to rewatch it, but I probably won't. Orphan 55 was possibly one of a few, what I would say, bad episodes of this season, in that it was absolutely riddled with plot holes and just bad cuts of things that didn't get explained, bad pacing, and there were just too many characters that were given too much attention. I think if they cut a few of the characters out, it could have been a decent episode, but especially the message it was trying to bring across, it just came across really ham-fisted. So unfortunately I didn't like that one, but that's, I think, one of the only two. Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror was, apart from that terrible title, was a fun episode. I typically like the historical ones less, but this was definitely fun, although they, the villain, I've forgotten their name, but they looked a lot like the Arachnos, and I spent the entire episode trying to figure out how they link together, and they just kind of don't. Fugitive of the Jadoon was the major turning point in this series, and if they hadn't been tweeting about and Facebook posting about how you really want to be tuning into this episode because some big shit's gonna go down, I think they shouldn't have done that, and they should have just left it as it was. I know they have to draw in viewers and stuff, but like, maybe I should just unfollow them, but like, it would have been so out of left field. I mean, it still was. When they built up to the reveal of Joe Martin's Doctor, it was really headfucky. Like, I did not see that coming, and it made me sit up straight and pay the fuck attention. And I think it's a credit to this season that I wasn't going, oh great, what the fuck are they doing for lore now? It was more, oh my god, they're actually being brave with this series and taking it in new directions, and that is something that this series has sorely lacked for a long time now. I think maybe since the Day of the Doctor, it's kind of stagnated as far as overarching plot goes, and I think it's maybe because they play it too close to the bone sometimes. Is that the right phrase? I don't know. The one thing I will say about Fugitive of the Jadoon is it was great to see Jack again, but I kind of feel like he was put in there for the sake of being put in there. I kind of picked up on the language that they referred to when discussing him afterwards, that he wasn't going to be returning for the rest of the series, but it definitely seemed like most people thought he was going to. So I've yet to see any kind of, I guess, outrage about that, but I mean, hopefully there isn't outrage. It's just a TV show, guys. But it did feel kind of weird now looking back on it that he was just put in it. I mean, I don't necessarily think it shouldn't have happened, because it was great to see him and all, and hopefully that's them signposting that they want to include him in future seasons, like maybe the upcoming special, but who knows. Praxis was maybe another one of the weaker episodes, but I didn't dislike it, I enjoyed it. I just don't have a lot to say about it, really. It told its anti-plastic message a lot better than whatever the fucking one I was talking about earlier told its global warming message, because I think these are important messages, but I think this one told it better. It didn't feel so ham-fisted. Can You Hear Me was a very interesting episode. I think maybe more for fans of Classic Who, which is something I've never watched. But it seems like they were bringing back... I forget if they were called the Immortals or the Eternals. I think the Eternals. It seems like they were trying to shed some light on them. And I had my suspicions about this, which I think have been confirmed, that they needed to kind of bring a spotlight back to the more mystical... larger building blocks of a universe style stories if they were going to pull off what they pulled off in the finale. But yeah, it was fun. It was really eerie. The villain was really good. The story behind the other villain, I'm sorry, it's been a few weeks, I've forgotten their names, but the story behind them was really cool as well. Anime as shit, being trapped between two planets in like a prison like that was really cool. Also, they gave Yaz some really nice backstory in this episode. Season 11, it feels like they spent way too much time on the companions and not nearly enough time on the Doctor. I would say this season, although I'm glad that they spent way more time on the Doctor, it does feel like it's been done at the expense of almost zero kind of fucking, what am I trying to say, growth in the companions front. This was pretty much all we got all season, but it was really good. It was really good to see Yaz's character grow like that. The Haunting of Villa Diodati is, I hope I'm saying that right, is one of those episodes that I feel like a year ago, or maybe a bit longer ago, I would have torn apart a little bit, just because I would have been like, okay, so here's my gripe with it. And it's not even really a gripe, because it doesn't actually upset me, but going into this I was kind of like, if they make the events of this episode be the inspiration behind Shelley writing Frankenstein and Shelley writing his poem and all of this kind of stuff, I thought that would be kind of lame, because it would take away from, you know, the writers themselves coming up with their own creative stuff. But like I said earlier, I've come to realise that shit doesn't really matter. It's not like they were trying to prove a point by that. That just happened to be a byproduct of the story. The actual story itself was pretty decent, and it set up the finale pretty well. I will say some of it got a bit sci-fi jargony when it came to Shelley being in control of Siberium. I see that they wanted to give the Doctor one of those hard choices of kill one person, save 1,000 kind of a thing. Trouble with a trolley, that kind of dilemma. And it felt like they kind of didn't get there in a very natural way, but it was still nice to see, like in many episodes throughout most of the season, they gave Jodie's Doctor a lot of like new, or maybe not new issues to deal with, but new issues for her Doctor, I should say. It feels like in season 11 she was way too light-hearted, and we got some really fun dark moments here, especially in this episode. And then the two-part series finale, which I've just watched, again, Sacha Dhawan is a delight. I really hope we see more of his master. I didn't think you could get much better than Jomsim, but here we are. Missy was great too. I think the master's just a fantastic character, and there's always the problem of them being stale, but like, I hope they use them more, because the Daleks have never really done it for me. But that might just be because I never watched Classic Who. But the Master is more, I guess, tangible, because he at least appears human, and like, he's fun on screen, he's mad, whereas Daleks are just exterminate kind of thing. There's more dynamic to him. But either way, this is the episode that they were building up to all season, and a bit of last season as well, that threw a big old wrench into the mix, and changed the Doctor's lore from the very start. The Doctor is, obviously, spoilers, I assume you wouldn't watch this if you hadn't seen it, but the Doctor is now actually, I might have to rewatch it. It was either a creature from another dimension, or a creature from outside or before time, hence Timeless Child. Not entirely sure on that front, but there was a native Gallifreyan species who learned how to regenerate based on the Doctor, basically before the Doctor was the Doctor. And to be honest, I kind of thought that they were going to lean more into the whole your identity as the Doctor means that you are still like the 13th Doctor kind of a thing. Like, the first Doctor was still the first incarnation of you as who you see yourself as today, like leaning into that story that they started with the Day of the Doctor. But they didn't. But that's fine. It's not really a flaw. It's just something I'm surprised they didn't do. Maybe they'll kind of lean into it more, depending on where season 13 goes. But it was. I think there's probably going to be a lot of people online complaining about Malore, and complaining about how it throws a bunch of other stuff out the window and makes it not make much sense. But as I said at the start of this video, Doctor Who is so much more fun and so much more enjoyable when you appreciate it at face value, and that's not me. I guess that is me being a bit of an apologist for bad writing, but I wouldn't actually say this is necessarily bad writing. It's just really difficult to write in a lore-friendly way for a show that's been going for 60 years and has never made any kind of attempt to establish a base timeline or a base lore or anything like that. And I think the way they do it is kind of on a series-to-series basis, and make sure it makes sense in the minds of people who have been watching for, I guess, at least the last decade, but not necessarily for the entirety of the show's running. And I thought it was great. Seeing the ruins of Gallifrey, that was a really cool setting. That was possibly the most dramatic setting for a Doctor versus Master we've ever had. I was really surprised that they went the full way of letting the Master make his Cyber Lord race, or Cyber Master race. I was hoping you'd call them Cyber Lords. And he showed them off in that they do work. Obviously we didn't get to see them in action, but he did. If you paid attention to the, I guess, subtitles, or you just heard him yell it, before he got blown up and everything, he did exit stage right with them, so I assume they'll be popping up another time. Also, the whole organic bomb thing going off kind of lends itself to the idea that now all of Gallifrey? Now all of Gallifrey is dead and all of the Time Lords are dead for good, but I think the Master said something about having their consciences backed up, which wouldn't necessarily be organic matter at that point, so they always give themselves a backdoor to work with. Either way though, I thought it was a fun way to make the stakes really high, and they didn't necessarily just... Okay, so Barristan Selmy was absolutely Deus Ex Machina, but apart from that they didn't like play it too safe at the end. They paid it off in a decent way. So sorry if this has been a bit rambly, but I have kind of come off the back of watching this, and I am trying to, maybe in the future I won't review an entire series at once. I'll do it on an episode by episode basis. Again, this Thoughts on series is kind of new. I'm kind of working it out as I go along, and I think in this video I've realised that I should probably make videos on a series episode by episode while the thoughts are still fresh on something like this, at least if it's something that's airing currently. So maybe I'll do that next time. But either way, thank you for watching or listening to this ramble, and I will see you in the next video where I will have thoughts on another narrative thing, I am sure. Also, if you're mad that I'm not mad at Doctor Who, I'm mad at you for being mad at me not being mad. I don't know. I'm just tired of outrage, man.